Yeah, my name's Mando, and thanks for coming out. This is my story of how I became a software developer and the things that I've learned. I started off actually not as a software developer, but I was working at a ISP. I'm from Austin, internet service provider in Austin, Texas, doing phone support. This was back in 1997, right, when connecting to the internet was still dialing up on Windows 3.1.1 machines and Windows 95 machines. And it wasn't. It was an interesting time, and it was an interesting job. I learned a lot about debugging interesting machines that people had in their homes, and trying to figure out how and why they couldn't connect to the internet. In fact, I think that the reason that I am probably better at debugging software today than I am at actually writing it is straight up from that job, learning how to debug stuff kind of on the fly. It was a great job, great first job, right? Got to learn how to deal with kind of frustrated and irate customers, learned some really good debugging skills. And things went well for a good solid month, maybe two. And then we changed directions a little bit at the company, right? And we had to move from doing only phone support to doing half-time phone support and half-time making long-distance sales calls, of all things. So the first half of the day was always awesome, and the second half of the day really sucked, because there's nothing quite like calling up old ladies in East Texas and asking them to change long-distance companies at dinner time. So I couldn't take it after a while, and went in and gave my resignation. And when I did that, I thought I was going to, just tell them I wasn't going to work there anymore, and that would be it. But they pulled me in to meet the owner of the company, and he asked why I was deciding to leave. I told him because calling up people and selling long distance kind of wasn't what I had signed up for. And he asked me where I was going, and I told him I was going to another ISP in town that my buddy worked at, right? And he got me a job doing tech support, the same kind of stuff. And he asked me what I was going to be making, and I told him it was a little bit more than I was making there. It's like $1 an hour more. And so he said, well, you're a good employee, right? Your numbers are good. We get compliments from our customers about you, so we don't want you to leave. Would you be willing to stay for a 50-cent an hour raise on top of the $1 raise that I was getting, right? So it's an extra $1.50 for doing an hour for doing nothing other than quitting. Right. I mean, this was like 1997 $1.50, right? It's real money. So, I said thank you. That's it's an amazing offer. Would I still have to make these long distance phone calls? And he said something really interesting. He said those phone calls are kind of what's paying your salary, way more than the tech support. And that's kind of when I learned my first lesson. Which was you can keep your job, right? Any job, really, so long as you provide more value to the company than it costs them to keep you on as an employee, right? Simple I.O., right? So you have to make sure that you're a financial asset to the company as opposed to a financial liability. And I realized that the value that I wanted to provide wasn't switching people's long-distance carriers. I wanted to kind of do what I was doing. So I said, thank you, but no thank you. And I was immediately escorted out of the building. That's fine. And I went and started my new job a couple days earlier than I had planned. And it was kind of more the same, right? Still tech support, still handling customers' complaints, helping people get set up and online. So it was something that I was used to, something that I was okay at. And I learned a lot about dealing with, like I said, irate customers and frustrated customers. My boss was great. He said, whenever customers call in and complain, right, it's our fault in some way, shape, or form, right? They couldn't connect to the internet, if their mail server, or their connection to the mail server died, whatever it was, right? It's at some point it's our fault, and they don't know why. They don't know why things aren't working. They just know it's not working, and it's our responsibility to help them, right? So instead of treating them like idiots, you got to treat them like people that you care about, and that's helped me a lot in my career, right? Being able to, as best I can, put myself into other people's shoes, whether it's customers or it's product managers or QA people, right? Being able to kind of feel what they're feeling puts me in a place where I can better communicate to them, right? I also learned that sometimes customers are just jerks, right? We had this one guy who called in, and he was just awful. He was abusive and really, really upset for just to be upset, right? He was so abusive, in fact, that I put him on speakerphone so everyone could hear the colorfulness that he was using. And my boss walks by, and he thought maybe someone on his staff was yelling at a customer. And when he realized that it was a customer, he picks up the phone immediately and says, "Your business is no longer welcome," and hangs up the phone. And he turned to me and said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry you had to sit through that. Canceled this guy's account immediately, and if he calls again, send him straight to me." So that's when I learned that a boss's job is to protect and insulate their employees, right? Not just from abusive customers, right, but from things that they shouldn't have to deal with, right? Things that are outside their job description. It's their most important job. It's the most important role. So I kept working there, and I soon moved towards software development, right? Kind of in a roundabout sort of way. We had a bunch of internal tools, right, that did customer management and billing and stuff like that, and they were all internal, and like most internal tools, they only kind of work sometimes. So I started working on them, trying to make them better, and I soon realized that that's what I loved, right? It wasn't just the tech support side of things. I kind of liked fixing software and building software, and my boss noticed that, and noticed that I was spending more and more time working on the software and providing more and more value to the company as a software developer than someone who's on the phone. So one day he comes up to me and says, "You know what, I kind of just want you to do this all the time." So that's how I got my first full-time software development gig. And I loved it so much that I spent hours and hours and hours working on this stuff, weekends, and I mean, this was all like Perl and corn scripts, right? I mean, this was not the most fun kind of software to work on, but I loved it, and it got me a really good gig and got me kind of on the path that I'm on today, right? So I learned that when you find something that you really enjoy doing, right, do it as much as you can, right? And you can find, maybe find a different path that than you were already on by kind of applying yourself and spending the time and energy that it takes to move yourself past what it is maybe that you're currently working on. So so I started doing full-time software development, and that was wonderful, right? It was like halcyon days, right? It was my first salary gig, so I didn't know what it was like until that point to not have an hourly job. It was pretty awesome to not have to hit a certain number of hours, right? You just kind of get your stuff done. This was in 1999, right? It's the height of the dot-com boom, and I would get phone calls from recruiters, right? Like I'm sure everybody did at the time, but I was pretty happy where I was. All that changed one day, however, when my girlfriend at the time told me when I got home one night that we were pregnant with our first son. It wasn't exactly planned, but it was fine. It was. It was better than, more than fine, right? It's one of the best things that's ever happened to me. But I knew that I couldn't keep living the way that I was living, right? I was living with like 3 other dudes in a crappy apartment, paying like $200 a month in rent, right? I mean, I had a family on the way. I had to provide, had to be a dad and a father and a husband. So I picked up, or I responded to one of those voicemails and found a much better paying gig. Bounced around a little bit in the Northeast and ended up in New York City working at a financial services company, right? And so here I was, in end of 1999, living in New York City, right? I felt like a grown-up for the first time in my life, right? Here I was, going to be working downtown Manhattan on Wall Street, right, walking past the stock exchange every day, right? I felt it felt really, really good. And the job was really satisfying, right? I got to work on some really cool software. Still Perl, but it was good. And the financial services industry is an interesting place, especially in New York, right? I didn't know it going in, but they kind of expected these really crazy hours, really long hours. And everyone, it wasn't just me, everybody did it, right? Just kind of how things were. And I didn't realize it at the time, but working these long hours, 14, 16-hour days were the norm. I was doing what I would soon find out to be irreparable damage to my marriage and my family. I wasn't home as often as I needed to be. I wasn't there for my wife. I wasn't there for my son. And so things started to deteriorate rapidly. And so we started thinking about moving back to Austin. Then September 11th happened, and we really started thinking about moving back to Austin. And we eventually did, but we made the decision to move back. But now the problem was that this is now in 2002, right? And all those jobs that were floating around a couple of years previously weren't there anymore, right? But we made a decision that if we wanted to try and salvage this family, we were going to move back. So I talked to my manager and told him what was going to happen. And he said something that I wasn't expecting. He said, would you be interested in working remotely? Same job, same pay, but from Austin. I said, heck yeah, I'll do that. Where do I sign? So we moved back, and I get this gig. And that's when I learned that good employees are few and far between, right? Incredibly hard to come by. It's hard to train people. It's hard to find people who fit in the way that I fit in at this company and in this team. And so employers are willing to do things that you might not expect them to do in order to keep that kind of employee. So I worked remotely from Austin for these folks for a while. And it's kind of a bad idea to be the only remote employee for a company, I learned. I didn't do a good job keeping them updated with my status, and they didn't really do that great of a job keeping me busy with work. So after a while, both parties decided that this wasn't working. So I found a gig back in Austin doing healthcare software. And it was at this place that I met Brian Carlson. Brian's one of those people, I'm sure everyone here has met someone like this, or you probably are. He's one of those people who is uniquely gifted at what we do, right? He just kind of sees things differently, He can look at a problem and just kind of rip off a solution, and I would realize that not in a million years would I have ever come up with that solution, but it was obviously the right one. So I learned that when he looked at my code and when he gave me advice about how to do stuff, my code was a lot better, right? And when I got him to put some eyes on the code before I released it, it was way better than what I could have done. So it's crucial to find a mentor in this industry. It's crucial to your success. It may be someone at your work, it may be someone in the community, maybe someone at local meetup, maybe someone online, right? Someone you work with on an open source project, sit in IRC, whatever. Wherever you find them and hold on to them, right? When you find someone who cares about you and cares about your success, right? Don't let that go. This was years and years ago, and I still talk to Brian, right? Once a month at least, right? And he still gives me great career advice, great life advice. He's an amazing individual. And in fact, he was the person who suggested that I go to my very first Ruby conference, Lone Star RubyConf in Austin, the first year. It was coming around, and he said, "Hey, I know you're playing around with Ruby a little bit, I know you're playing around with Rails. You should go and see what it's like." So I went and met a bunch of really, really interesting folks and people who kind of pushed me towards getting my first Ruby job. So I left this place and went to a company that builds search engines for university libraries. And my first Ruby gig, first Rails gig. And it was an amazing, amazing place, right? The whole team was distributed, but there were 2 of us in Austin. So we would hang out. We started working at the other guy's house for a while, and then we got an office. And everything was going fine at work, but all of that awfulness that had kind of started way back in New York finally came to a head, and I ended up getting a divorce. By this time, I had not 1 kid, but 3, and that divorce, it just wrecked me. It ruined my life in ways that I'm still trying to recover from. I was miserable. I was doing terribly at work. I was drinking all the time, drinking myself to sleep and kind of drinking to wake up. It was pretty awful. And a very good friend of mine one day, kind of at his wit's end, listening to me bitch and moan and cry and sob, kind of sat me down and said, you know what, you're a software developer. You've been doing this for a while now. You solve problems every day. That's what you do, right? So solve this one, right? Don't just sit there and take it, right? Fix it. I didn't know what to do. So we sat down and kind of decomposed the problem. And yeah, I was still kind of mourning the divorce and mourning the loss of that relationship, but that wasn't what was killing me, right? What was killing me was not spending time with my kids, right? That's what was really kind of driving me to this dark place. And I didn't know how to solve it, but I knew that was the secret, right? That's what I had to fix. So I found myself sitting, looking at my calendar and looking at their calendar and trying to find time that I could somehow pull them back into my life. And I realized that every day during the week, after school, they'd get off of school and then go to daycare. And they would be in daycare for 3 hours or so till their mom picked them up. And I just had this epiphany, like, well, I can do that, right? She didn't have to pay for daycare, right? I can watch the kids for 3 hours every day. So I called up my ex-wife and asked her, and she was hesitant, obviously, but she decided to give me a shot, right? I'm sure the financial obligation kind of helped move her in the right path. And I called my boss and I said, "Is this something that I can try?" And she was super supportive. She said, "Give it a shot. Just try it and see. And if it, try it for a month, and if it doesn't work, well, it doesn't work." So I gave it a shot, and it worked out really, really well. I got to the point where every day, and this is still the case, right? I pick them up from school, and I bring them home, and I sit with them for 3 hours. I help them with their homework. I make them snacks, right? I'm a part of their life. I see them every day, right? Which is more than most, I think, divorced fathers get with their kids. So what I learned from that was that it's not a bad idea sometimes to apply kind of our engineering principles to our personal problems, right? We shouldn't be afraid to apply that same kind of intellectual rigor that we take to our work and apply it to our personal life, right? Sometimes it doesn't work, but sometimes in this case it did, right? I had to kind of brute force the problem, right? I was literally going hour by hour trying to figure out, well, can I see them Saturday afternoons? Well, can I see them Sunday afternoons? And I got to this place where I live a really good life with my kids now. So I had this change in my schedule, right? And it was kind of hard to work around at first, but it worked out really, really well. And we ended up kind of getting over that hump, and work kind of settled back into this nice routine, kind of working around my schedule, which was amazing of them. And then one day I get an email from my buddy Hayes, and he asked me if I want to come work for him. Right now, I had met Hayes a couple of years back at a local community event that we have in Austin called Cafe Bedouins. It's a weekly event where people just kind of get together Tuesday nights and hack on their side projects. At the time, Hayes was trying to build this company called Apposite, now Union Metrics. And I met him there, and we became friends and kind of worked on stuff here and there. And then he sent me this email saying, hey, we're now at this place where we can hire an additional engineer. Would you be interested in coming to work for us? Now, I had a really good gig, right? I mean, they had bent over backwards to accommodate me and my schedule. And so I talked to Hayes about it, and I said, I don't want to leave these guys, but I also really want to work with you guys. I mean, they were filling all the check boxes, right? I was going to be at a place where I was going to provide the kind of value that I wanted to provide. I was going to work at a place where I had readily available mentors, right? Hayes is an amazing engineer, someone that I wanted to learn a lot from. His other engineer, Jerry, is another amazing engineer that I felt I could learn a lot from, right? They understood that spending time with my kids was my priority, and they were willing to accommodate that. So it was with a heavy heart that I left my job and started working with Hayes. But also, I was super excited to go and work over here. So much so that this is what they give me now in Campfire. That happened right before I came up. Hayes is my boss at the bottom, who says to not fuck up my talk. So don't tell him that it's going terribly. But this is the kind of environment that I wanted. These are people that I love and I cherish, and I get to learn from, and I work with on a daily basis, and they support me, even though it doesn't quite seem like it support me in their own special way. But it's an amazing place. We do awesome work, and you get to work on all sorts of cool stuff. Some things that I didn't quite get at my last job, right? This is the best job I've ever had, right? In a career of really awesome jobs. So I learned moving to Union Metrics, which is where I'm at now, that it's super important to work towards your priority, right? We all get one priority in life, right? My priority right now is spending time with my kids, and everything else kind of falls underneath that, right? Finding mentors is a priority, not as much as spending time with my kids, but having good mentors, providing value, having a good work environment, having people that you work with who you care about and who care about you, right? So try and make sure that the decisions you make in your career and in your personal life are always moving you towards that one priority, right? And you have to kind of stop and think about what your priority is, right? Maybe your priority is, I don't know, working as little as possible while still having food on your table, right? So you have time to do other things, right? Maybe your priority is to make $1 billion and never have to work again, right? Maybe your priority is building really, really cool stuff. Whatever it is, right? We only go around the sun a certain amount of times, right? And every day that you're not working towards that priority it's kind of a day wasted, right? We're super fortunate to do what we do, I think. I remember a couple months ago, I went to the UPS store to ship something, and they were having kind of a job interview day thing at the UPS store, right? And there were 10 people in the store, all wearing suits and ties, interviewing for one opening to work the cash register at the UPS store, right? I don't think I've ever had to interview against 10 other people, much less show up in a suit and tie, right? But these people did, and that's what they had to do, right? And I don't think we're in that position in this industry, right? We can kind of pick and choose the kinds of jobs we want to do, you know. And I mean, it's an amazing time and place that we live in. So I think we owe it to those guys to actively choose where we work and actively choose what we do every day, right? To think about what you do on a day-to-day basis. Think about where you work, right? Like really think about it and think: are you working towards your priority at work, right? Is it moving you in the direction you want to move, your career and your life, or is it not, right? And if it's not, maybe change that, right? And you don't have to go look for another job, right? But you can change where you're at, right? I don't know how to say it the best way possible, right? But we have so much power and so much agency in what we do, right? That we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to people who don't have that, right? To kind of actively live our lives and think about why we do things, where we do them, and the way we do them, right? I think the worst reason that you can do anything is because that's what you did the day before. And I think sometimes we fall into the trap of going to work, maybe because we went to work yesterday, right? And we don't really care a lot about where we're working, or we don't care about what we're working on or who we're working with, right? And that's super dangerous, you know? We deserve better, I think. And I mean, if you love your job, that's great, you know? And I think most of us do. But we should be thinking more, I think, as a community and as individuals about what direction we're moving in and where we want to go. Maybe building the next lolcats for Facebook isn't the best thing to be working on today, right? And if you love it and that's what you want to do, that's fine, and do that. Right? But if you want to do more, you can, right? I think that's the point. If you want to do more, you can, and you don't need to do what you did just because that's what you did yesterday. So, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.